Hello, Gareth here, and in this video we are going to paint buildings. So this picture is from a village. It's of a village in England, in Leicestershire. So I hope you like it. And the buildings we've got are a church and some houses. We've also got some trees in the background and a dramatic sky, and we've also got some cars in the foreground. So in the previous video we learned how to paint cars and boats and figures, so now is your chance to put that learning into practice, and hopefully with good results. So please get ready and let's begin to paint this picture. So the first thing we are going to paint is this dramatic sky, and there's a lot of dry brush with this sky, and also I changed the quantity of water. So here it was a thick mix and here a more watery mix. So let's have a go at that. So I've got my hake, get some paint, and let's make a thickish mix, not too thick, and we don't want it too wet either. Okay, whoops, we got some splatter, a little bit more, and here we go. So dry it. And then let's water it down. Have to be careful if we put too much water on the brush and then mix it with this thicker mix. If it's dried a little, we might get cauliflowers. In fact, we still might get cauliflowers, but we will see. Hopefully not. So like that. Quite a rough brush strokes, and I'm just hoping we don't get any cauliflowers there, but we might. But I think that's good enough, and there we go. We've got our thicker mix here and our more watery mix here. So let's leave that to dry. Okay, now it has dried, and now for the difficult part, painting the buildings. So I'm going to put this here where I can see it and use it as a reference, and here we go. So I'm just getting some pigment and some water and getting the right mix. Okay, so I think that will do. Let's just do a quick test. Yeah, so my church will be about here, and these little, I'm not sure what they're called, but they're beautiful, aren't they? So do them. Sometimes I get a little bit of splatter from the paint, and you just get some tissue and dab it and it will go. But a little splatter isn't so bad. Okay, so we're coming down, press down, like that, and then here a little bit comes out like that. If you want, you can do an outline of these buildings, and there's a download that you can copy, and if you use carbon paper, then you put the outline that you print over the carbon paper, draw over the lines, and then you should get the marks on the watercolor paper. So if you want to do that, that's no problem. But bit by bit, you want to get confident at painting buildings without any lines, or just as few lines as possible. As few lines as possible. It's not a bad idea just to have a few lines, but don't go into big detail. And here we got a chimney. Can you see how I'm doing that? Okay. And then we can make space for the car here, but you don't have to. You can just paint the car in later. I will try and make a space for the car. That's a bit more challenging. And then if the paint begins to dry, just spray above it like that, and then no stress. Wow, not so much stress. And then we've got the church coming here, and then we've got these houses beginning here. Big confident strokes. That's what you want in watercolor painting. And then space for the car there, roughly. And then the trees are tricky because we want a dry brush effect. So you want pigment on the brush, but you don't want it too watery. Can you see that? See that lovely shrubbery effect? And maybe we're going to stop about here. It's not easy though. There we go. That's good enough. Maybe I should do this one a bit higher. A little bit of variety is very important. So we've got a big one and a small one, and spray it. Keep it wet. It's amazing how quickly it can dry, and when it's dried it's not workable anymore, so you don't want that. And our other car is going here, and if I want to I can do this, look, because I painted that area. So use your tissue, it's not cheating, and make a space for that car. And this car is going to be closer, so it's going to be a little bit bigger than this one. So if you really wanted to, let's wipe it out again, and then make it a little bit bigger. I think that's bigger. And again, not doing very well here. Just be careful though, because your brush will pick up, sorry, your tissue will pick up paint, and you can spread it to clean areas or white areas, which you don't want. And let's spray this again. And yeah, this time of year in Japan, winter time, the air is very, very dry, and there's a bit of sunshine today, so maybe that's why this is drying so quickly. You always have to try and be aware, if you can, of your environment and the conditions. In Japan in summertime it's very humid, and that can be good in a way, because your paint doesn't dry very quickly, and that can be really useful. It can give you a lot of time. but thankfully we've got this spray bottle, and that's extremely useful. Okay, there we go. Not too bad, right? Not too difficult. Big blocky shapes. You want to look at these things as shapes. Don't see them as like three-dimensional things, but just as like you know, like a bit of I don't know what you would say, but you know, like kind of think of it like squares and rectangles and blocky shapes like that. And then they're much easier to paint. And just think of them as angles. Like you've got an angle here like this, and then you've got an angle here. And as long as you don't, well, as long as you can just see them as shapes, they're much easier to paint. Okay, and I'm going to spray again because it is drying very, very quickly. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, yeah, let's do the cars. So the windscreens of cars are normally either very, very dark or very, very light. Well, extremely bright actually, dazzling. So please remember that when you paint cars. I'm being a bit boring here because I'm doing both very dark. It might have been better to have done this bright actually, and I regret now that I've done it dark, but there you go. Next time, and then do the bodies a little bit of a lighter mix. And I'm already going wrong there because I want to leave some whites for, oh, spray. I want to leave some whites for the headlights. You see how using the tissue and using the spray bottle gives me a lot more freedom. Like that. Look at that. Quite simple, just blocky shapes, but looks very good. And then I might just mix these together a bit because I think that just looks a bit more, just looks better. And these cars are equal distance, which is not what I intended, but sometimes you just go with it. And sadly, this is drying super quick, but I think I'll just alter this a bit, curve it a bit. Can you see that? It might go cauliflower on me, might get a run, but it's okay. There we go, careful. Okay, and then let's wet here. So, and move it up to there. Being careful not to touch these cars, but I am touching some of the buildings like here. So this is basically going to be a bit of a wet road. It's after the rain. That's a scene that I really like to paint. Wet roads after it's been raining. You get beautiful reflections. And here we go. Now this is going to spread out. So you can see that spreading out there. And one thing I perhaps should have done is a little bit of here at the bottom. Looks good, doesn't it? Water it a lot more and then do a bit more up here. So don't worry if this doesn't work the first time. Sometimes I forget I've been painting for such a long time, and things that maybe I find now quite easy might be very challenging for you, but stick with it, keep going, because once you can achieve these beautiful soft reflections in the road, you'll be so happy with them. They really are beautiful. but it does take a little bit of time. It's mostly just confidence, I think. Most amateur watercolour artists, to be honest, the problem really is, okay, maybe a bit of experience, of course, but I think also just being a bit too careful. Ooh, although sometimes being a bit careful is a good idea. I'm making that car much wider now, probably too wide, but there you go. And maybe that church has a bit of a reflection, so maybe, yeah, I should do that there, like that. So I'm just gonna do some pure water in that, and I'm just gonna wet that, and then do a reflection like that, bit stronger. There we go. And now, okay. And so what I'll do is I'll make this car windscreen wider. This is cheating and not recommended, but it will just look more correct. There we go. And a bit thicker. And maybe make this one as well a bit stronger. And then maybe here we can have some kind of front bit. And I think I'm going to make these car shadows even stronger, like this. And maybe these house shadows and church shadows, reflections, sorry. There we go. And blend them in a little, like that. And that's looking quite nice. And then let's spray. But can you see how you paint things as blocks and connect them and unite them and do them all at the same time? And this is good because this unifies your whole painting. Everything is connected, and that's exactly what you want. You don't want something over here, something over there, and they're not joined. So this makes a very, very strong painting. So I'm waiting for this to dry a little because I'm going to make some lines in the road. And if I wanted, I could also do some things like windows and stuff like that. To be honest, just like this is okay in my opinion. But if you wanted to do some details, then now you need super thick paint. So I've got a slightly damp brush, but I'm sticking it in the pigment. I'm not adding any water to it. And this is probably still a bit too wet. Oh, no, that's okay. There we go. And then maybe a little bit there. And a little bit there. And some just suggestions of windows, things like that. Here's some kind of bottom of the roof, whatever that's called, and some windows, but not too much. That's plenty. This is where it's really important just to suggest and not to carefully represent everything, but just a simple blob like that, and it's enough. Yeah, that worked better than I thought it would, actually. So I think we're getting ready now to make some marks in this road. Now if this goes wrong for you, please don't worry, because this is one of the hardest things in watercolor painting, and it's timing when to do this technique, which is a clean brush. Just a minute, 100% clean, and we're waiting for when it's not too wet but also not too dry. If it's too wet, the mark we make will disappear like this. Look, maybe we're going to do a line there. Now if that disappears, it means the paint is too wet. Oh, it's not disappearing. If you don't get a mark, it means the paint's too dry, which might have happened here. So these are marks for the car. So what I'm doing here is basically using water on top of pigment to make marks. And it's a beautiful effect, but it's a super dangerous one. If you get a big drop of water come off your brush, it will make a big white puddle in the paper. And that's happened to me many times, and it's going to happen to you. But keep doing this technique, I would recommend, because it looks fantastic. If you want to do something much safer, you can get some white gouache, some white opaque paint, and after it's all dried, then you can make these lines. And you can use a rigger brush like this, very long thin hairs, and that will work really, really well too, and that's safer. But this technique, when you get a feel for it, it's a lot of fun, and it looks really nice. Yeah. I think this road is looking a bit weird. Haven't quite got my perspective right, but there you go. But you can see the effect, and you can see how beautiful it looks, right? And that's it really. There's just one more thing I'd like to show you. Also, you can do things like use your fingernail and do little marks, but again, it depends on the dryness of the paper. If the paper's very dry, you're not going to be able to make any marks. And yeah, in fact, it's a bit too dry, but we're getting a few marks. And don't overdo this, but it can be a lot of fun. And in some paintings, using your fingernail can be really, really wonderful. And if you make a mistake, you can always use your skin and just go over it like that, and it will get rid of some of it like that. And don't worry about these marks, because really it just adds a bit of texture. Just adds a bit of texture to the building. And there we go. Let's leave that to dry. One more thing I forgot to do was to have a curb, and have to do this carefully because we want it to be a thin line. So let's get the right kind of pigment, not too wet and not too dry, and then dab it so we get rid of the excess water. And then we want to get the lines together like that. Just drying my fingers on some tissue, and we're going to have a curb line there. So just be careful, because this paint's still a bit wet. You might get a run. You can do this after it's dry if you really want to. Like that. and we want this gap to get wider. Can you see that's getting wider because of the perspective? And that's a bit wrong there. That's the white line of the road, but let's not worry about that. It's good enough. So there we go. What we can do with these trees, because they're in the distance, although this is a bit artificial, these trees, they're not that far away, but to make them look further away and to give the whole painting a sense of depth, we can make these look fainter, because they're the they are the objects that are the furthest in the background, and if we can make them look fainter, then it will make other objects look like they're closer and create a much stronger sense of depth and reality, and basically a much more powerful painting. So I think that's dry, because not much paint's coming off. So if it's dry, it means I can wet it. So normally you should wait for the whole painting to dry completely, but because I'm impatient, I can't wait, and I'm just going to do this now. So you basically go over it with as few brush strokes as possible. And then get our brush, and here we go. Nice clean strokes. Whoops, I didn't want that to happen. Get some clean tissue. So be careful that doesn't happen to you. We've made it a bit fainter. Okay. At first I didn't used to like using tissue, but I'm beginning to like it more and more. It's difficult, but I think the results are quite fun. And of course, the more you do it, the better you get at controlling it. Okay, there we go. And as you can see, making that fainter makes everything else look closer and gives a bit of depth to the painting. And if you really want to, you can let it dry, go over it with clean water again, and then do more tissue. Basically you're almost, I think, scraping the paper away, but only a thin bit. But it looks very, very good. I'm happy with that. Okay, so we've finished the painting. So please have a go and let me know how you get on.